Prehistoric Epidemic, circa 3000 BC. About 5,000 years ago, an epidemic wiped out a prehistoric village in China. The bodies of the dead were stuffed inside a house that was later burned down. No age group was spared, as the skeletons of juveniles, young, adults, and middle-aged people were found inside the house. The archaeological site is now called Hamin Mangha and is one of the best preserved prehistoric sites in northeastern China. Archaeological and anthropological study indicates that the epidemic happened quickly, enough that there was no time for proper burials, and the site was not inhabited again. Before the discovery of Hamin Mangha, another prehistoric mass burial that dates to roughly the same time period was found at a site called Maozigo in northeastern China. Together, these discoveries suggest that an epidemic ravaged the entire region. Prehistoric Epidemic, circa 3000 BC. Plague of Athens, 430 BC. Around 430 BC, not long after a war between Athens and Sparta began, an epidemic ravaged the people of Athens and lasted for 5 years. Some estimates put the death toll as high as 100,000 people. The Greek historian Thucydides, 460 to 400 BC, wrote that people in good health were all of a sudden attacked by violent hits in the head, and redness and inflammation in the eyes. The inward parts, such as the throat or tongue, becoming bloody and emitting an unnatural and fetid breath. Translation by Richard Crowley from the book The History of the Peloponnesian War, London, Dent, 1914. What exactly this epidemic was has long been a source of debate among scientists. A number of diseases have been put forward as possibilities, including typhoid fever and Ebola. Many scholars believe that overcrowding caused by the war exacerbated the epidemic. Sparta's army was stronger, forcing the Athenians to take refuge behind a series of fortifications called the Long Walls that protected their city. Despite the epidemic, the war continued on, not ending until 404 BC, when Athens was forced to capitulate to Sparta. Antonine Plague, AD 165-180. When soldiers returned to the Roman Empire from campaigning, they brought back more than the spoils of victory. The Antonine Plague, which may have been smallpox, laid waste to the army and may have killed over 5 million people in the Roman Empire, wrote April Pudsey, a senior lecturer in Roman history at Manchester Metropolitan University, in a paper published in the book Disability in Antiquity, Routledge, 2017. Many historians believe that the epidemic was first brought into the Roman Empire by soldiers returning home after a war against Persia. The epidemic contributed to the end of the Pax Romana, or the Roman Feast, a period from 27 BC to AD 180. When Rome was at the height of its power, after AD 180, instability grew throughout the Roman Empire, as it experienced more civil wars and invasions by barbarian groups. Christianity became increasingly popular in the time after the plague occurred. Plague of Cyprian, AD 250 to 271. Named after Saint Cyprian, a bishop of Carthage, a city in Tunisia, who described the epidemic as signaling the end of the world. The plague of Cyprian is estimated to have killed 5,000 people a day in Rome alone. In 2014, archaeologists in Luxor found what appears to be a mass burial site of plague victims. Their bodies were covered with a thick layer of lime. Historically, used as a disinfectant. Archaeologists found 3 kilns used to manufacture lime and the remains of plague victims burned in a giant bonfire. Experts are not sure what disease caused the epidemic. The bowels relaxed into a constant flux, discharged the bodily strength, and a fire originated in the marrow ferments into wounds of the fauces, an area of the mouth. Cyprian wrote in Latin in a work called De Mortalitate, translation by Philip Schaff from the book Fathers of the 3rd Century. Hippolytus Cyprian, Chaos Novician, Appendix, Christian Classics, Eteria Library, 1885. Plague of Justinian, AD 541 to 542. The Byzantine Empire was ravaged by the bubonic plague, which marked the start of its decline. The plague occurred periodically afterward. Some estimates suggest that up to 10% of the world's population died. The plague is named after the Byzantine Emperor Justinian reigned AD 527 to 565. Under his reign, the Byzantine Empire reached its greatest extent, controlling territory that stretched from the Middle East to Western Europe. Justinian constructed a great cathedral known as Hagia Sophia, Holy Wisdom, in Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, the empire's capital. Justinian also got sick with the plague and survived. However, his empire gradually lost territory in the time after the plague struck. The Black Death, 1346-1353. The Black Death traveled from Asia to Europe, leaving devastation in its wake. Some estimates suggest that it wiped out over half of Europe's population. It was caused by a strain of the bacterium Yersinia pestis that is likely extinct today and was spread by fleas on infected rodents. The bodies of victims were buried in mass graves. The plague changed the course of Europe's history. With so many dead, labor became harder to find, bringing about better pay for workers and the end of Europe's system of serfdom. Studies suggest that surviving workers had better access to meat and higher quality bread. The lack of cheap labor may also have contributed to technological innovation. Coco-Lesley Epidemic, 1545 to 1548. The infection that caused the Coco-Lesley epidemic was a form of viral hemorrhagic fever that killed 15 million inhabitants of Mexico and Central America. Among a population already weakened by extreme drought, the disease proved to be utterly catastrophic. Coco-Lesley is the Aztec word for pest. A recent study that examined DNA from the skeletons of victims found that they were infected with a subspecies of Salmonella known as paratype C, which causes enteric fever, a category of fever that includes typhoid. Enteric fever can cause high fever, dehydration, and gastrointestinal problems, and is still a major health threat today. American plagues, 16th century. The American plagues are a cluster of Eurasian diseases brought to the Americas by European explorers. These illnesses, including smallpox, contributed to the collapse of the Inca and Aztec civilizations. Some estimates suggest that 90% of the indigenous population in the Western Hemisphere was killed off. The diseases helped a Spanish force led by Hernan Cortes conquer the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan in 1519, and another Spanish force led by Francisco Pizarro conquered the Incas in 1532. The Spanish took over the territories of both empires. In both cases, The Aztec and Incan armies had been ravaged by diseases and were unable to withstand the Spanish forces. When citizens of Britain, France, Portugal, and Netherlands began exploring, conquering, and settling the Western Hemisphere, they were also helped by the fact that disease had vastly reduced the size of any indigenous groups that opposed them. The Great Plague of London, 1665 to 1666. The Black Death's last major outbreak in Great Britain caused a mass exodus from London, led by King Charles II. The plague started in April 1665 and spread rapidly through the hot summer months. Fleas from plague-infected rodents were one of the main causes of transmission. By the time the plague ended, about 100,000 people, including 50% of the population of London, had died. But this was not the end of that city's suffering. On September 2, 1666, the Great Fire of London started, lasting for 4 days and burning down a large portion of the city. The Great Plague of Marseille, 1720 to 1723. Historical records say that the Great Plague of Marseille started when a ship called Grand Saint Antoine docked in Marseille, France, carrying a cargo of goods from the eastern Mediterranean. Although the ship was quarantined, plague still got into the city, likely through fleas and plague-infected rodents. Plague spread quickly, and over the next 3 years, as many as 100,000 people may have died in Marseille and surrounding areas. It's estimated that up to 30% of the population of Marseille may have perished.